that with them immediately. But how many of them call us, we send them information, and they never use it? I've had major television programs that I can name for, I mean major ones, such as 2020, for example, who some years ago did a thing on psychic surgery. They spent over an hour with me on the telephone getting information. I sent them faxes, I sent them photocopies, every piece of information I had. And yet they never used any of it. And the program they did was very supportive of this so-called psychic surgery that's done in the Philippines. It's all sleight of hand. It has never saved anybody's life. They don't perform real operations. It's total trickery. And yet the 2020 program saw, I guess the editor said, well, that's not the attitude we want. We want to be politically correct, so we'll accept everything these people say. And I'm sure that as a result, people went to the Philippines to be operated on and came back here to die. This it borders on the criminal in my estimation.
Okay, when you say, for example, about psychic surgery, that it just doesn't work, I mean, what specifically do you mean? I mean, is it something that any good conjurer can do?
Yes, absolutely. I've taught 12-year-old kids to do this on television programs very easily. It's not a difficult sleight of hand thing at all. I do it practically every one of my lectures, or use a tape of me doing it on some show or other, just to show people how easily done it is. And yet it's very effective when you're on that table and you think you've got a fatal disease of some kind, and they say that they're taking tumors out. Now, the only time I ever spoke to Peter Sellers was in Pinewood Studios in England, many years ago, and he said to me that he believed in psychic surgery because both of his astrologers had told him that this was the real thing, this is what the stars said he should do. So twice a year he went off to the Philippines to have his heart operated on. Now, his doctors had told him he needed bypass surgery. He needed a triple bypass, and he was very ill. He could hardly take his breath. He was working on a movie that was never finished, and he died in the middle of the production. But he told me, he said, Mr. Randi, I saw this with my own eyes. And I said to him, Peter, tell me, with who else's eyes might you have seen it? Well, the conversation broke up at that point, unfortunately, and Sellers, a couple of months later, went back to the Philippines, came back to work on the movie, and died on the set of heart failure. Now, we lost Peter Sellers, and we've lost a lot of other valuable people simply because they think they're smarter than some charlatans out in the Philippines or any place in the world who have the wool pulled over their collective eyes.
Let's turn to a slightly different case which comes up, and again, it sort of borders on the pseudoscience as you defined it, because perhaps there are not lots of scientists who study it, but there certainly are very smart people who believe in alien abductions. What do you have to say to someone who says, I was abducted by an alien?
Well, you said smart. I differ with you on that. They might be intelligent, they might be well-educated, they may be very perceptive, have high IQs, all of those things. That doesn't make them smart. Smart is the ability to handle the real world as it occurs. As smart as being able to find a can of peas after the atom bomb hits. Smart is being able to survive in the street and manage your real life in a real world. Intelligence and education has very little to do with that when you come right down to nitty-gritty and actually handling the real world. Now, this whole alien abduction thing of being taken off to Venus and Mars always strikes me rather funny. Nobody of any importance ever gets picked up. It's always some bored housewife or a drunken fisherman or some such thing. They get taken off to Mars, and of course they have their genital areas examined with great glee by the aliens. I have no idea why aliens are so interested in the reproductive systems of human beings. But these people just love to come back and tell Oprah about it, and Larry King. They just delight in doing that because it gets them on TV, it gives them a profile they would never have otherwise. It lasts for about 2 weeks, and then that's the end of it. Now, if these people are going to come from other star systems, and they're going to contact civilization here, I would think they might do it on a higher level, land on the White House lawn or some such thing. I think they could get away with that pretty well, and that Bill Clinton would probably walk out and say hello because he'd see a good photo opportunity there. Why is it that they're always very unimportant, insignificant people who are bored with life and want some attention, who get visited by the aliens and get taken off to Venus and Mars? And not only that, when they come back from Venus, they say, oh, it's a very nice place, gardens all over it. We know it is not a nice place. We know that through science. We've observed it in close-up. We know that it's not the way they describe it to be. But since we can't go there on regular tours that are arranged through the local travel agents, they get away with this because most people are not that well informed about it.
Are these people lying when they say they were abducted?
I don't think they're lying in some cases, because there's such a thing as what we call the hypnopompic and hypnagogic experiences, and I'll send you to an encyclopedia to look those up. They're pretty lengthy to describe, but these are hallucinations that we can often have when we're going to bed and falling to sleep, or just before we wake up in the morning, or in the middle of the night, as a matter of fact. And some people think these things are so strong that they couldn't possibly be hallucinations. Now, I talked to a chap not too long ago from Phoenix, Arizona, who said, "But Mr. Randi, this was real. It wasn't an hallucination." I said, "What's the definition of a hallucination?" He said, "I've got it right here." And he read it out of his dictionary. I've forgotten what dictionary it was, but it said something to the effect, a sensory impression that is so strong that it does not appear to be unreal. And I said, "Well, isn't that right there?" He said, "But I know it wasn't an hallucination because it happened to me." Now, an hallucination is something that you don't know is not real, but is not real. It's a misrepresentation of your sensory system. You've been betrayed by your sensory system, if we can put it that way. So these people often do believe what they say at first, but then their story starts to grow, and by the time they got on Oprah with it, they weren't only taken to Venus, they were taken to most of the stars too, and they've got a full description of the clothing that the aliens wore, and with their names and their families and the whole thing.
Okay, let's turn in the last part of the show to talk about the remedy. And in a way, an earlier answer points us in the right direction. You made a distinction between being smart, being intelligent, and being educated. So what you've got in mind, I take it, is education of some form. I mean, that's in the title of your organization.
Right.
But that you think there's something fundamentally flawed with the education that we now have.
Absolutely. At the James Randi Educational Foundation, we bring in classrooms, and we send instructors, such as my colleague Andrew Harder, who is very good at this. He goes out to classrooms and actually partakes in the educational process. And teachers who experience this, they just come to us with tears in their eyes and say, "This is what I've been looking for." Because the average teacher doesn't know what UFOs really are. They don't know anything about therapeutic touch or chiropractic or any of these things. They just know the name, and they see the signs, and they see the articles in trashy newspapers and whatnot. They see these things, they get a peripheral idea of it, and when their students ask them about it, they don't know what to say. Now, under a substantial grant that we're applying for at this moment, we hope to turn out 20-minute videotapes that will be distributed free of charge to teachers anywhere in the country, in fact, around the world eventually, we hope, that will inform them about these things. A dispassionate and very well-centered, I would hope, discussion of such off-the-wall subjects that teachers are often asked about by their students. But the average teacher is certainly not equipped to answer these questions, and to merely brush it off and say, "Oh, no, that's all nonsense, I don't want to talk about that," is not satisfactory to a student. Students want to know, and they should be told. We quote Bertrand Russell very often here. What is needed is not the will to believe, but the will to find out. And critical thinking is the way to find out. That's what we want to teach, and that's what we want to instill into teachers. Critical thinking is important. Now, sometimes that runs into your personal philosophy. Many parents come to us and say, "But they won't ask about God, will they?" I don't know. And if they ask about God, I'll give my opinion, and Andrew will as well. We will all here at the JREF give our honest opinion and ask them. If they want to share it with us, fine. If they don't want to, that's fine too, because everyone has the freedom to make these choices. That's what the US of A is all about, and we must never lose track of that. Not only that, but I must add this, it doesn't mean that people who believe in UFOs and in therapeutic touch and homeopathy and ESP and people flying by flapping their arms, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means in most cases that they're uninformed. Now, the harsher word is ignorant. But there's nothing wrong with being ignorant unless you can repair it. And the means are out there. You can repair it. Courses are offered, in many cases free of charge, and certainly here at the Foundation, we want to teach you critical thinking. It's a very good thing to have. Skepticism is not a bad word. It's a good word. And when people kick the tires on cars, they don't realize it, but they're being skeptical and they're employing critical thinking.
Okay, explain more. How would you describe this difference between education as it's normally done and critical thinking skills?
Unfortunately, I think in this country, and I think this is the most important thing, our teachers are not well enough paid. Teachers should be paid as very highly respected professionals, but at the same time, they have to be able to produce. They have to be able to be teachers, not just instructors who say, read chapter 4 and we'll talk about it tomorrow. That's not teaching. Teaching is getting kids interested, getting the students in general, whether they're kids or adults, interested in looking into these things, inspiring them, showing them that knowing about things is very exciting. It's not dull. It's not a set of rules. It's a set of guidelines that will enable you to find out about the real world, and that's what science is really all about. That's inspired teaching. I don't find much of that, frankly. We have teachers here in Florida that have blown me away by being such great teachers. They are really exceptional, and we've got a couple in local schools right near us here, and they come to us and just wring their hands in despair and say, but I'm surrounded by people who don't know how to teach. And that's quite true in our educational system. I don't find it to be the same way in Europe, and that's one of our shames, I think, here. Here we are, one of the most advanced civilizations that's ever been on this earth, and we have failed our students by not having a better educational system that is fearless, that does look into every question, regardless of whether it offends somebody's political correctness or not. We must learn to do this, to be brave and to be critical.
So part of what would designate critical thinking skills are, to use two words you've used so far, is one, to be fearless, that is, to be willing to look at anything and everything, and secondly, to be skeptical.
Yes.
Could you say a little bit more, too, about what you mean by skeptical?
Yeah, it seems like a dirty word, doesn't it? That's one of those skeptical people over there. But it's really a very healthy attitude. If something doesn't appear to appeal to your sense of reason, and, hey, quantum physics doesn't appeal to my sense of reason, but then I look at the people behind it, and I look at the history of it, and as I look into it, I find, by golly, that does make sense. It really does add up, and they can prove it by means of experimentation. So I have to accept it, even though it's not something that I would instinctively accept. There are a lot of things that you don't instinctively accept that are actually true, but most of them, when your instinct says, hey, I smell a rat here, you're probably right, because that's a survival technique that we've all developed over the years and that's hardwired into us the day that we're born. That's very useful to us. So when something seems too good to be true, it's an old saying, I know, old, hackneyed, and worn out, but it's true. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Be suspicious of these things. Don't buy everything that comes along. You see advertisements for magnetic insoles with little magnets embedded in them. It says that there's iron in your blood, hemoglobin in your blood. Yeah, and that helps the blood flow around your body. Nonsense. It does not. It is ineffective. They've been around since the early 1800s, and people who wear them can pick up paper clips on the soles of your shoes, but that's about it, friends. It's no more use to you than that, and they sell for fantastic sums of money. Little bands you put around your wrist and around your neck and you put on your chest and whatnot. These are refrigerator magnets. The refrigerator isn't any better for having the magnets on it, and you won't be either. But if you were critical about these things, you would look at these commercials and you would see them for exactly what they are. It appears that the government, the federal government through the FTC, is not going to protect us on these things until it's too late. But we have to protect ourselves. We have to know about it because those government agencies have failed us.
I hate to say it, we are out of time. Thank you very much for appearing on the show today.
It's been a pleasure, and invite me back if you can stand it.
I'm sure I can at some point in the future. Thank you very much for appearing today. This is Hugh LaFollette for Ideas and Issues. My guest today has been James Randi, President of the James Randi Educational Foundation. Good day.